Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this afternoon. We're going to get this conversation started. My name is Kyle Paalman. I am the president and co-founder of NuWave Technology Partners. So NuWave is a managed IT service provider out of Michigan, and proud to say we are celebrating our 21st year in business this year. So today I'm joined by Pete Terryn and our moderator, Kara Sparrow. Pete, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Pete Terryn here. I am the Chief AI Officer for Prescott, and we exist to serve clients with their AI needs along with their CMMC compliance needs. And also mention Kara. Thank you for all the work that went into putting this together. But Kara's also going to be monitoring the chat, so if you have questions, she'll be passing those along as well. We can go to the next slide. So why are we here today? Well, we're going to be talking a lot about AI. So if that's what you're looking for, you came to the right place. And we're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about AI security and data security because that's something that comes up a lot in these conversations. But beyond that, we're also going to be sharing success stories of how we've successfully implemented AI, not just only for NuWave, but for our clients as well. So if you can go to the next slide, please.
So yeah, Pete, as I look back on our AI journey, I mentioned that it's been 21 years in business for NuWave Technology Partners. Kind of mind blowing for me personally, but in preparation for this presentation, to look back and realize it's been nearly 4 years that we've been talking about AI and been on this AI journey is probably equally as mind blowing that the time has flown by so quickly. So when I look back on that, those early conversations, Pete, you were coming to Chad and I. ChatGPT was, just went mainstream, and you were very enthusiastic. Could you share with everybody just, what was driving that enthusiasm at the time?
I, in prepping for the webinar, I went back to see if I could find any emails where I was talking about AI. And the earliest one I found was in November of 2022, or sorry, December of 2022. November is when ChatGPT kind of hit the news and started making waves there. And I dove in immediately. I think for me, it was, I'm a sci-fi kid. So here I am. I lived long enough to see all these movies that I watched as a kid, talking robots and all these things, like they're becoming a reality now. And that really grabbed me. But I also think it's how I'm wired. If you're familiar with the StrengthsFinder assessment, I took that years ago, and it has these 34 categories and ways to identify like how people operate. And they rank them your strongest to your weakest. And the number one, the top one for me was futuristic. So I think it also just kind of appealed to me from that futuristic standpoint as well.
Yeah, so early on, Pete, you were leading operations for NuWave at the time. Introducing the concept of ChatGPT, as you mentioned, sending emails out to your team as early as December 2022. Share a little bit more on those early years, how we were using AI both in your team but across NuWave and across the leadership team that you were part of.
Yeah, that email was asking our internal IT about this new ChatGPT thing and how, can I use it first of all, and then how can I get everyone to use it? I was running operations for NuWave at that time, and I wanted everyone on the team to be using it. So I spent a lot of time evangelizing it, and we got a lot of traction. I know our technicians are using it to troubleshoot issues. We're going to talk about how our sales team has used it here in a little bit. We use it, our leadership team uses it for annual planning, quarterly planning. We use it to record meetings and take those transcripts and analyze them with AI and use that to help with forward planning as well. So a lot of really fun use cases, and really, I think I consider that to be the language model level of AI. There's another level that's agentic AI, and if we can advance, or I'm sorry, we're going to stay on this slide here, and we're going to talk about that agentic AI.
Yeah. So yeah, I look back and kind of, you said, we're using AI in our in our leadership meetings. We were, a thought partner helping us, both develop better questions, but also better plans for the year, for the quarter. This one is an example that, I look back, it was basically a year ago that I'm coming back from an industry conference. Of course, it's all about AI. It's all about Microsoft Copilot and how we could be using agents both internally in our organizations, but with our clients. And if you remember, Pete, that was when I thought it was a really good idea with all my spare time that I bring on a sales intern. The idea of helping this individual, really introduce them to sales, but also, the idea of cold calling and how to, build out that discipline. So coming back from that industry conference, it was about within weeks of the new hire coming on board, and really seeing an opportunity and vision. How could we use an agent to help not only support this individual, but possibly even take some of that management off of my shoulders. So, but no, really the vision was if I'm looking at a persona online, and what is that persona that this individual would want to model their cold calling after. There's a lot of great examples online of how to enhance your cold calling skills. Build out an agent that could, instead of this individual calling out to potential clients, but could that individual call into this agent, and the agent could provide, help on building out a better script, help where they're running into problems. As this individual starts calling out to potential clients, could that agent right alongside that individual, possibly even whispering in their ear, saying, "Hey, you're stuck here. Here's an idea how you could advance it." So, not all of that vision came true, but at the time I sent that over to you, Pete, and said, "Hey, go work with Pete. He's our guru. He'll help build this out." And I know a lot of those examples did, better scripts, enhancing the scripts with feedback, and really working alongside that agent. We did run into terms of service with Copilot at the time that blocked the idea of Copilot providing feedback to an employee. But so that was an example. But today, we have some just where we advance. If you could talk a little bit about that, Pete.
The example you gave, well, first of all, if people don't know that you can have a conversation with AI, it's a great way to interact with it. So I'm glad we highlighted that. I look at that still as more of a real-time interaction with AI, whether you're typing in a chat window or you're talking to it. When we talk about agentic AI, it's a different way of leveraging AI. Agentic AI is when you have an AI agent that is doing work on your behalf. And it can be doing it in conjunction with you, or it can be doing it autonomously. So an example of that we are using here at NuWave, I was having a conversation with Joe from our sales team, and he said, "Man, I would just love to know what our competitors are doing. Are they running a promotion? Are they making changes to their site? Do they have a new offering? Did they open a new office?" These are all great things to know, because when you're out talking to clients, they might also be talking to your competition. So, we sat down and we talked about, what it would look like to get a daily intelligence report. So we built that, and he's using ChatGPT, and there's ways to use agents within ChatGPT. And we came up with a list of competitors that he wanted to track. And we said, "Okay, ChatGPT, every morning, I want a report in my inbox. I want you to go scan their websites, their social media, and let me know what's going on with their business." So I think, it's a great way to, leverage AI to work on your behalf. Let's go on to the next slide here, please.
Yeah. So when this is really kind of when we look at where AI has evolved, again, going back to the evolution, where we started and where we're at today is, today really looking at organizations that have been trying to solve problems internally for, possibly years, months, that at the time there just really hasn't been a great solve for it. But today, with the help of AI and custom AI solutions, Pete, we've got a great example of a client that you met with and kind of took them through a process and ultimately have a great story of, if you want to dive into that and explain it.
So this is a NuWave client. They knew that we were doing stuff with AI, and they reached out and said, "Hey, we know we got to get into this AI thing, and we know you guys are working with it, so can you come work with us?" So they engaged us in an AI strategy program, which includes us sitting down with the team and just doing really kind of a lot of interviewing, asking a lot of questions, figuring out how they do things today, what problems they're running into, what are those repetitive, problematic workflows, those things that a computer could probably do better than what you're doing now, but you don't really have a way to solve it. So we talked in those conversations, we surfaced more than a dozen different areas that we could have dug into. But there was one issue that really stood out above all the rest. Everybody on the leadership team agreed that this was their most problematic workflow. So what this company does is they're in food manufacturing. So when they get product from their vendors, it comes with a certificate of authenticity. And that has to be passed along to their clients once they're done, doing what they do with that product. They have to send that along. So they were manually taking them from their vendors, hand keying them into their own letterhead and their own program, and then passing those along to their clients. And they were spending, more than 10 hours a week just with their frontline employees that were doing that work. But the more we dug in, we also found out that their IT team, in particular, what the guy that was running IT for them was spending a lot of his time just massaging and keeping things limping along because it was a very clunky workflow. And there were errors, they'd have to go back in and manually fix them. And, like I said earlier, everyone thought this was a very problematic workflow for them. So they had actually spent months of their own time and a lot of their own money trying to solve this on their own. And they were using this technology called OCR. And if you're familiar with it, it can look at a document and pull data out of it. But because that would shift when they get it from different vendors, they were unable to make those adjustments. So we explained to them that AI overcomes all of those issues, and we could build something for you that would automate that whole process. So they moved ahead very quickly, agreed to move ahead with that project because it was such a painful workflow for them. And we were able to automate that whole thing. I think it's a great example of how NuWave and Prescott working together are helping clients, but they are really different. It's a departure from how NuWave has worked with clients in the past. And if we can advance to the next slide, Kyle's going to speak to why we separated those things out.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. When we look at the IT OT model here, as we're looking at, NuWave, when we started incubating the AI practice within NuWave, one of the things is, we look at what is NuWave's core focus, what does NuWave, excel at is maintaining that network infrastructure, the network infrastructure that our clients, operate their businesses on, rely on to essentially make money. Cybersecurity and the data security around that network infrastructure and that environment. And ultimately, the end user support of that, that is NuWave's wheelhouse, core focus, and what we really want to continue to excel at. Not to be lost on us is the idea and many conversations over the years. How could we get more involved with the operational efficiency? I'll call that with our clients. And historically in these conversations, it's often very more of a niche of a specific ERP platform that's for a specific manufacturing client, or maybe it's a specific custom software for a law firm, for example. And it's really, how do you become all things to all people and really understand each of these different critical business applications for all of our clients was just overwhelming, and it took a different skill set that would, in my opinion, take us off our core focus there. So at the end of the day, that's, when we look at how AI comes in and helps us solve for these solutions, and less of a niche specific understanding of an industry, as Pete just shared with the food processor, it's a different skill set. It's different people, different talent, and just for us to not try to continue to be all things to all, or start being all things to all people, it was important to us that we really spun that component out of NuWave and what we're talking about with Prescott today. So advance that slide there. And I talked a little about data security, but Pete, I know that comes up in your conversations all the time as well.
It does, and I'm very fortunate that my my job is to talk to people about AI all day. When I'm talking with business leaders, there's a lot of questions that I get about AI, but there is a common theme that runs through all those conversations, and it is data security. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here on this next slide.
Yeah, so when I look at the conversations that we're having with our clients right now, looking at from the leadership level, right? Leadership is often looking at, where does AI fit in my organization? How can it make my employees and my operations more efficient? Have they started with, have they looked into a process for it, deploying it? Have they have an acceptable use policy in place? Have they got started down that path? Employees, again, looking at, where does AI fit in my day-to-day life? More and more tools are popping up from your phone, from your computer, from Copilot. Rank the finance. Could AI help me more efficiently handle my email, my calendar? Well, are there any risks? Those questions that we're asking. Maybe there aren't, but are there compliance requirements? Are there, where are you feeding that data? Shadow IT is always a fun one, not a new concept, but one that's evolved with AI. What models are employees using? What data are they feeding into those models? What are they trying to download that maybe IT is not aware of or is not approved? Well, do we have any tools in place to prevent that? These are the questions that we're looking at. Go ahead and advance that next slide. I think diving into a little bit more about how we at NuWave, when we faced this question, Pete, you were leading operations at the time, and I think it was fun for you to be drilled by our team.
Yeah, you would think, with me running operations that I could, make things happen in the organization. But when I started asking for, to give AI access to more and more tools within our ecosystem, I got a lot of pushback. And, I got questions like, well, what data is this going to have access to? Is it going to have just read privileges, or is it going to be able to write too? Well, what do permissions look like? Who gets access to this data and who gets access to all data? It got hammered with all these questions. But I'm very thankful for that. And if we hadn't had those conversations early on, I don't think we would have been as ready to help clients moving forward with AI. But it just makes sense that NuWave's IT team is super strict about data because we're responsible for managing all these other client networks. So thankful for that, and it did help form how we approach clients as we move forward. If we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so speaking with our clients as we are going through this experience internally, really going into 2026 was recognizing that AI is, for all the right reasons, going to be a bigger part of our clients' networks and part of their organizations. And really, it felt it was our duty that we start guiding a safe conversation around that. Helping our clients. I'll say, take less of the status reporting of what we did for the last quarter, but start diving into more their operational pain points, as Pete shared that example that possibly we could automate and overcome that. Helping our clients really dive into, from a leadership level, do you know what models your employees are using, what data they might be feeding, what data they have access to because of things like Copilot running on the network? Do we have an acceptable use policy in place that provides any type of governance to our employees of how they should be using AI in the environment? So those are really the conversations that we want to start leading with our clients in those quarterly and start discovering ways that AI can come safely be adopted into the organization and ultimately help our clients be more operationally efficient. So, we're appropriate then bringing in Prescott and taking that conversation to the next level with security at the top of the mind there. So it's when I look at where NuWave is going with our clients, it's not in any way about blocking AI adoption, but it's really to enhance AI adoption, but doing it in a safe and thoughtful way. So.
All right. Well, good news for everybody. We're getting close to the end of the webinar here. So just to start to wrap things up, we've got a few more slides after this. But to bring this all together, we believe, with Prescott and NuWave working together, that secure AI starts with a secure network. And if you're working with NuWave already for that, you've got the experts, and I know they're doing a great job for you there. But also the conversation is changing. We're not only talking about your IT infrastructure. We're not only talking about break fix in the day to day, but how can we talk more about what is troubling your business operationally, and how can we solve that and bring in Prescott and address those issues? And how do we do that with custom AI solutions? I'm sure you're all thinking of some pain points in your business, and you've probably looked for tools to address those things. But if you can't find that, we're able to build something customized for you that will help solve that. And then that trusted guidance. I mean, NuWave's been around for 21 years, and we're not new to the AI scene either. We just shared how we've been doing this for years, and the term "eating our own dog food," like we're implementing this at NuWave, and we're implementing it for other clients. So we have a lot of experience there. And if we can go to the next one. So if you want to get your phone out and scan this QR code, it will send you to a landing page where you can sign up for an AI assessment from Prescott. And if you're joining this webinar, you can get 10% off of the cost of that assessment if you do it before June 4th. So you got a few days to do that. But what does that assessment look like? We explain how we come in and we interview different members of the team. We get very in depth, and then we surface those AI opportunities, and we put that into a AI strategy document that is yours to keep. And you can use that as your playbook for moving forward. But also, we will then work with you to implement solutions to those issues that we surface through those interviews.
All right, thank you, everybody. As Pete said, please scan the QR code, take a look at what starting your AI journey might look like.
Thank you so much for being here with us, and thank you, Kyle and Pete, for an amazing webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.